Hello again. We need to talk about codominance and the genetics problem set number 2. So the first set, we talked about complete dominance, where one allele was completely or totally dominant over a recessive allele. What we're talking about here is codominance, where there's two alleles that are equally expressed. Thus we call it co, which is the root for together or with. That's where the term cooperate comes from, to operate with. Okay? And what happens here is everything is dominant. All of the alleles are expressed. Nothing is recessive. Okay, so everything is dominant. So earlier in the videos, we talked about blood typing. And in humans, there's a very, very common way to type blood, and it's type A, type B, type AB, and type O. Now, this is not the only way to classify blood. There's also M and N blood groups. It all depends on what you want to look at on the plasma membrane of the red blood cell. So with type A blood, these were the individuals that expressed the A glycoprotein as discovered by Carl Landsteiner. Fine. So how we write these alleles, though, are attached to a capital I. And you ask me why, and I don't know. I've never found the history behind why we write it to attached to a capital I. But we always carry our alleles in pairs, right? We received one from our biological mother and one from our biological father. So someone who is type A blood is what we call IA. They carry the two A alleles for type A blood. What's interesting is that there's a second choice. This person could also be IA little I. And you say, well, hold it. I thought you said that in codominance there isn't a recessive. I agree, there isn't one. The little I doesn't code for anything. It's a blank. It's a placeholder. So what this person codes for is A and nothing. Therefore, they still have type A blood. So there's two possible genotypes for type A blood. Then you look at type B blood. They could be IB, so there's their genotype. Or they could be IB little I. Again, this is a placeholder. It doesn't code for anything. So, two different genotypes, but both genotypes code for the same phenotype. Genotype, phenotype. What we see genetically, what we see physically. Now, for an individual with type AB blood, there's only one choice. They're IA, IB. That's it. If they were IA, IB, little I, they'd actually carry 3 chromosomes, and that is a whole different discussion. Whereas an individual with type O carries the two placeholders. They are little I, little I. Okay, so these are the 4 different phenotypes of blood, type A, type B, type AB, and type O. And these are the possible genotypes for each phenotype. Okay, so let's make a cross. Let's take a male and a female. And let's give him type AB blood. And let's give her type O. Okay? Well, if he has AB blood, he has type AB blood, he has to have the genotype of IA, IB. He has to. So he is IA, IB. She's type O blood. She has to be little I, little I. Like such. So let's take a look at their Punnett Square. You might want to draw it a little extra big because you need the boxes now to hold the I's and the A's and the B's. So her contribution, let's put it up there. His contribution is here. Got it. So just like earlier, This is her contribution, his contribution. Inside of the ovum, inside of the sperm, they join through fertilization, and the offspring could be IA little I. Or come over here, would also be IA little I. Down here, IB little IB little I. So even though the biological mother has type O blood and the biological father has type AB blood, they have a 50% chance of a type A child, and they have a 50% chance of a type B child. So it's possible that an AB parent and an O parent could give rise to an A child for their first child and a type B child for their second child, and all 4 people are genetically related and no one has the same blood type. It's totally possible, right? So sometimes there's a lot of variation, like in that problem, and then other times there's very little variation. So there's this guy named Robert, and he has type O blood. And there's this woman, Dawn, and she has type O blood. So there's Dawn and I. She and I both have type O blood. That's our phenotype. So our genotype has to be little I, little I. So we had a daughter. What's Emily's blood type? You don't know Emily's blood type, but you can figure it out. Because take a look at our Punnett Square. Even though the last question had a lot of variation in it, there's no variation between Dawn and I, right? Dawn contributes little i's, I contribute little i's, and the only child that we could have, our only choice, is type O. Okay, so sometimes there's a lot of variation, like here, and sometimes there's absolutely none. So if you have an O and an O, the child has to be O. Okay? So let's see what a paragraph, more of a word problem, like your genetics problem set, is going to look like. So it says, a female with type B blood reproduces with a male who has type A blood. Determine the genotypic and phenotypic ratios of their offspring. All right, so step 1 is always to dissect the problem. Remember the procedure for how to tackle genetics problems. You guys did a fantastic job on the first problem set. Let's continue that same momentum, that same style into the second set. So we have a female. She's type B. We have a male. He's type A. All right, so our second step is to define our alleles. And so we have IA, IB, and little I. Got it. So we have a male, and we have a female. This is step 3. Step 3 is to draw out our cross. What does the problem tell us? The problem tells us that our female here, our female has type B blood. And our male has type A blood. Okay, so what do we know about our female for sure? We know for sure that she carries big I, big B. She carries IB for sure. Do we know what her second allele is? We don't. It didn't say anything about their children, okay? So pick one. You could make this IB, you could make it little I. It's totally up to you. Same thing with the male. We know for sure that he carries IA. We don't know what his second allele is. So just to make things interesting, let's introduce some variation and let's make them little i's, okay? We really don't know what these are, but to complete the problem, let's just fill them in. All right, so step 1, read the problem. Step 2, list your alleles. Step 3, lay out your cross. Okay? Now, Punnett Square. Thank you, Reginald Punnett, for rediscovering Mendel's work. We appreciate that. His contribution here, her contribution here. All right, so these two alleles join in fertilization. IA, IB. You always write them alphabetical, by the way. These two alleles, IB, little I. These two alleles, IA, little I. And then these two alleles, little I, little I. So now we need to tackle, it says, the genotypic and phenotypic ratios. Okay, so the first step was to dissect our problem. Step 2, alleles. Step 3, parents. Put a cross in there. Step 4, Punnett Square. Step 5 is to actually go back and answer the question. So, genotypic ratio. Now, for blood types, there's 6 genotypes. 4, 5, 6. You see, 6 genotypes? Sure. Because you have IA, little I. You have those two. Then for Bs, you have IB, little I. Then you have AB. Whoops. And then you have little i's, like such. It doesn't matter how many genotypes you have. Don't be intimidated by this. When you add these numbers up, it has to equal 4 because that's how many choices you have in the boxes. I don't care if you have 12 genotypes. The sum of the numbers here will still only be 4. Okay? So we have an IAIB. So we have one of those. Don't forget to check it off. We have an IA little I. We have one of those. Check it off. IB little I. We have one of those. And little I, we have one of those. The rest are zeros. Not complicated. So your genotypic ratio is 0 to 1 to 0 to 1 to 1 to 1. Okay, because hey, guess what? 0 plus 1 plus 0 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. Now you have your phenotypic ratio. You have 4 phenotypes. Your 4 phenotypes are type A, type B, type AB, and type O. So, how many of these genotypes express as the type A phenotype? Both of these, even though they're a different genotype, both of those present as type A. IA and IA little I as a genotype expresses as type A for a phenotype. And then both of these express as type B. And then these are just a straight shot here and here because there's only one choice. So while your genotypic ratio was 0 to 1 to 0 to 1 to 1 to 1, your phenotypic ratio was 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. Same thing. It doesn't matter how many phenotypes you have, whether it's 2 or 20, when you add these numbers, the sum has to be 4. Why does it have to be 4? Because there's only 4 boxes in the square. So this is an introduction to blood typing problems, and on the next video we'll start digging into problem set number 2.